What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother and the other great host of this show, Nick. And Nick, gotten some updates on Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald. The draft is about 3 weeks away, roughly. But first and most importantly, how are you, my good brother?
Oh, good. I'm full baseball Nick now. I'm working on my pitcher's hair coming out the back of my cap. I got my Dodgers hat that I finally curled down a little bit. I'm good. I'm ready. I'm ready to talk some football, though. I
can see you shagging some pop flies in the outfield. You got your Ramsey mug. You play a little defensive back. I saw you play defensive back on the SoFi field. Nicky's got some skills. Don't doubt his athleticism.
Yeah, when are we go? I don't know. I don't think anybody was. When are we? When are we going back to SoFi?
I will go back whenever you'd like. I would like to go back this year, definitely for the Eagles game, because I know we have some family that I'm sure is going to want to travel out from Philadelphia over to Los Angeles to go check that out. I know the Rams played the Giants in Jersey. It's not technically SoFi Stadium, but I'm just trying to map out a couple of times. So I'm going to go see them this year. But yes, time is coming to SoFi.
Yeah, maybe when they drop the new yellow uniforms, you come out here. We'll do another tour and have a good time, play some golf.
Hey, if they set it up the same way that they set up WrestleMania. You put Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, and Matthew Stafford on the grand stage and do the jersey reveal that way. It would be great.
WrestleMania.
You get Snoop Dogg and Pat McAfee. Oh, roll them all out.
No. There's nothing more I despise than when I'm listening to my sports podcast and they start talking about WrestleMania as if it's like one of the main sports. And I'm like, what are we doing? The Ringer? Why are we talking about WWE? It's an act.
That's funny. I was listening to The Ringer today. I was listening to some of their mock draft podcasts, and yeah, they do go off. They go off base a little bit. They kind of set the expectation that a podcast is supposed to completely go off the rails, and you could say whatever the hell you want, which is great. I love that for my listening, but yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily the direction we're trying to take the podcast, but all good. No. Everybody's got their own little mojo. Nick, as the last couple of weeks have unfolded, we've kind of been gradually, slowly getting some news on Matthew Stafford, on Aaron Donald, on Cooper Kupp, on their rehabilitation, specifically on Donald and Cooper Kupp. But Matthew Stafford specifically, I thought this was really interesting because McVay was just on Sirius XM. Not sure if he was talking to the Los Angeles ESPN radio station or whatnot, but I know that this article came out earlier this morning from Cam De Silva from USA Today. So there was Matthew Stafford. He's been throwing as of recent. Like, it already feels like this offseason is
thank God.
Thank God, drastically different from this time last season. There were question marks surrounding his elbow, the health, whether it was, he had pitcher's elbow. What's the term? He needed Tommy John surgery within his elbow. That was all controversy. He wasn't throwing at all during OTAs and minicamp. So McVay said that it was really the first time in a long time that he's had a full offseason where he's actually felt good. He suffered that spinal cord contusion last year, and he was placed in concussion protocol twice. So I think I would just be thankful over the fact that I have a starting quarterback that has the look in his eye once again. And I felt like we all heard that news break once we heard Matthew Stafford go on Kelly Stafford's podcast the next morning after the Super Bowl, when the McVays were watching the Super Bowl with the Staffords. And we realized that McVay and Stafford were trying to game plan, as to next year. We're going to see them in the Super Bowl next year. So it's all good news coming from Rams camp in terms of your three core players kind of getting back up to the level they need to be to prepare for the season.
Yeah, I mean, we all know it as Rams fans. Stafford can be a menace. You give him time in the pocket. He can, even if he doesn't have enough time, he can do a little fancy footwork and drop like a nice little dime to the running back and get like a nice easy first down. We've seen him the Rams have only really seen him like one full season, and he was great that whole year. Yeah. Take out November, and he is the MVP of that season, I think, like without question.
I entirely agree with you.
So to get him back, I mean, last year, I think all of us, including the Rams organization, like the people inside the facility and the players, were just still riding a Super Bowl high. Like I never felt disappointed at any point last year. And I don't really think that they did. Maybe towards the end, they started feeling some disappointment. But even McVay being happy that Baker Mayfield came in and won a Raiders game, like the whole time it felt like we were playing with house money. The whole time. And now we're getting to a point where it's like, all right, we are done that. We want to be an LA staple. We want to be here consistently, and we want to be a solid roster and compete. And now I think that Stafford is back to his throwing ways. I think we can actually get to that point. So just to hear all that, and then you got this great quote from McVay on Stafford. If you'd like to read that to us, or if you have the
Yeah.
clip, I don't know. Do you have the clip?
Yeah, no, it's just a really good quote. He said that what he's done for such a long period of time, that's what he's done for such a long period of time, is be relentless. He certainly elevates everybody that he's around. I think that it's the first offseason in a long time that he actually feels good. He's able to throw. He's able to kind of start his rhythm and routine a little bit earlier than previous years. He's got a really good look in his eye, and I'm glad he's leading the way for us, McVay said, sounding confidently in his quarterback. And it was encouraging, like I mentioned, because he didn't throw it all in OTAs or minicamp last year. So perhaps it's going to lead to a much more successful and productive offseason for the 2023 campaign, which I think is incredibly important when you have a quarterback that is of his caliber, that has 12 years experience, that has a Super Bowl championship under his belt. You kind of have to rely on that guy to be able to groom some of your receivers, your tight ends, your offensive line. The center position is so important. The blind side, protecting Matthew Stafford's blind side, is so important. And there's going to be some revolving doors and moving pieces in those situations. But I feel like for Matthew Stafford to kind of come back in this, finally have a really, really long offseason, coming off of the longest season in NFL history, as we've talked about. I remember the year in 2020 before he came, he was traded over to the Rams in 2021. He had a UCL tear in his thumb. I think he had something going on with his knee where he had a surgery to repair, clean out something in his knee. So you're constantly kind of gambling with a player that's in his 12th year, a player that is as injury prone as Matthew Stafford has been, but it's because his body has always been in harm's way throughout the first 10 years of his career in Detroit. Difficult to kind of overcome that, to get your ass kicked for 10 years. And then to be able to then come into Los Angeles, be perfectly protected, then get your ass kicked all over again the following season. So it's been a tough sled for Matthew Stafford, and I'm just encouraged to hear that he's back on track. And simultaneously, as we're getting that news, we're seeing Aaron Donald, who had the tightrope surgery on the high ankle sprain, going through ladder drills. And I mean, it does not get old watching Aaron Donald's footwork, whether he's going through ladder drills, he's running through tires, whatever it may be. It's incredibly fast. It's inhumane for an interior defense lineman of his height, of his weight, of his strength to be able to move that fluently, which is why I fully believe that there will inevitably be an Aaron Donald statue outside of SoFi Stadium one day.
Absolutely. I'm kind of upset that we don't have that already in hindsight right now.
Philadelphia, or as soon as they won the Super Bowl, Budweiser sponsored a statue for Nick Foles and for Doug Peterson for the Philly special.
I think that's
to the ring outside of SoFi.
No offense to Eagles fans, and I know this means a lot to you all, but you put a statue up of a backup quarterback and then a coach that you fired a year later, and you dumped Foles as quick as you could. And the statue is of Foles just talking to Peterson.
It's the Philly whisper.
Yeah, no, I know what it is, but still, it's why not have Foles catching the ball? Wouldn't that be so much cooler?
I guess.
I just Donald makes so much sense as the lone statue right now outside of SoFi. He's been with the Rams longer than McVay. Snead, I guess, has been there as long as him too.
Yeah.
But yeah. The only thing would be that there may be some ego in if Donald gets a statue and then it's
yeah, no.
Where's Cup's statue? Where's McVay's statue?
Yeah, no, I'm not worried about all that yet. I'm just saying that he's such an incredible. I've never seen anything like him, and I think that if you don't appreciate him now, you can go back, you can watch highlights, whatever. You saw him live over the last 10 or so years, but it just this, for whatever reason, this final window, whether it's the next 3 years where they tried to go rebuild it and try to go win a Super Bowl next year. I want to hone in and appreciate Aaron Donald's greatness as much as possible before it's over. So, I mean, just in watching all these little details, all through OTAs, through minicamp, through training camp, whatever it may be, I'm going to just predicate myself on focusing on Aaron Donald.
I was watching the highlights and I was thinking to myself, how was his training and his highlights from last year? How was he thinking about retirement last year? The guy is in crazy shape, and McVay too. And I think it just speaks on how high everybody was from the Super Bowl win the year before. Because when you get really high, after you get really high, all you really want to do is go home. You just want to go home and just call it, call it a life. And then when you sober up, the one thing you want to do is get back in your routine and get back to work.
Right.
And now it does feel like they are getting back into the regimen that brought them to that Super Bowl. And not to mention, the offseason has been a lot longer for them. A lot of the three pillars now, which are Stafford, Kupp, and Donald, all were able to rest longer than the actual offseason. So very good things.
Very, very much of importance in terms of getting your core back healthy, because if this is what you're going to be overly reliant on over the next season, you're going to ensure in all facets that those three guys are of perfect health leading into the offseason programs. One, so that they could lead it, but two, so that they could sustain their health and durability throughout the entire season, because the best ability is always availability. And those three guys are both over the age of 30. Cooper Kupp's going to be exactly the same age as I am. He's going to be 30 in June. Aaron Donald, I believe, just turned 30 recently. Matthew Stafford is already 34, 35. That was not me trying to drop in the fact that Cooper Kupp and I have the same birthday. That was just me trying to let everybody know, and as a reminder that the core is aging. It is something to take into consideration. This is the next 3-year window. It is now. Yeah. The time is now. So,
and this has to do with nothing, but I remember thinking it was very special. You had the exact same birthday as Cooper Kupp, and I am 2 days older than Jared Goff.
Jared's the 12th or 14th of October. I think you're a week older.
I think he's the 9th. Is he not the 9th? Well, he's like right there. I'm like right there with him. And I remember just thinking, I was like, oh my God, this is me and Dean if we were more athletic. Except I was always the receiver.
If only. Yeah, I guess. I could have played a little receiver too. I had great hands. Great hands.
Yeah, I know a lot of you are doubting Dean's athletic ability out there. All of our fans are doubting Dean's athletic ability, but he's kind of strong. He can probably bench 135.
Reverse those numbers and you got it correct. So that as we're kind of evolving on the talking through the core, the big board. Obviously, we talked to the big board in the last episode. We had a hell of a lot of fun. I think there's like 10 people now, 10 fans that have access to the big board. I want to encourage you guys, if you want to make entries, feel free to. Don't feel like you just have to look at it and wait for us to
don't delete everything.
Just don't worry. I saved the second version of it. So that if anybody goes in and just wants to hit the delete button because they hate us, that's fine. I have a backup. No, but we want to see your guys' entries. If you feel like there's a player that would fit the Rams' scheme, whether it's offensive, whether it's defensive, whether it's special teams, and you feel like you could fit them within our big board somewhere, highlight it, mark it, sign it off so that it's your name on there. And, we can keep this big board going all throughout the offseason or all throughout the next 3 weeks, because it's been a hell of a lot of fun.
Call me Snuffleupagus, because I love this big board.
the big bird, the big board, whatever it is that you want to call it, I'm open for it. Let me see if I could do this correctly, because I'm trying to share my screen. Here we go. Okay, the big board's back up, Nick. All the players that are highlighted within the big board are all players that the Rams have met, with the exception of these two players, Matthew Hemsborough and Harrison Mevis, who you guys may not have ever heard of before, but we're going to talk about them in this episode. So the guys that we've highlighted so far that are newcomers to the big board are, let's see, here we go. Adetomiwa Adibawore. He's the first one. We have an edge rusher from Northwestern. He could be one that rises all the way to the top of the big board, just based on some of the research I've done recently. Didn't watch him a ton in college, but after kind of doing a little bit of digging on him, he could be one that ends up at the very, very top of the draft board. There's also Payne Durham. There's Aiden O'Connell, Jake Bobo, Elijah Green, Anthony Kendall, Matthew Hemsborough, Harrison Mevis, and B.T. Potter. Last two guys are kickers, so hang with us on those two. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this all shuffles. I added a final column here on the right-hand side that says rising or falling, just based on the stock over the last couple of weeks. If we feel like players are falling from the slated position where they're set to being drafted, if players are rising due to certain characteristics, whether it's a pro day, whether it's an interview, whether it's intangibles, size, whatever it may be, and they're climbing all the way to the top, we will adjust accordingly. So, Nick, I wanted to go over the first guy that's on this list, because he is extraordinarily interesting. Adetomiwa is about as experienced in any position in terms of the defensive line that you could be experienced in. I believe he's a senior. He has experience rushing for multiple alignments. He's absolutely crazy, crazy athletic. He's a bit shorter than some of the other prospects, but I don't, he definitely has one of those bigger bases. He's heavier in the ass. He's a Jeff Fisher guy, and he wore number 99 in college. He played both interior defensive line and edge, but it doesn't really matter where he plays because he's fully capable of playing wherever the hell you want him to play. 4.49 40-yard dash as an edge rusher, but could also play interior defensive line is pretty ridiculous. Rare explosiveness. He's super twitchy, and he uses that long arm stab motion to stun his opponents, similar to how Aaron Donald does it very well. He could very easily climb to the very top of our big board, as I mentioned. And we now that we know that the Rams have officially met with him, I just don't think that he's going to be there at 36. I think he's way too versatile as a talent to be able to fall all the way down to 36. But Nick, our points here stand. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 names on our big board are all 5 guys that I think we'd be very happy with ending up with.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the thought process of this example is like, let's try to log jam as many of those late round first, early round second guys onto this first portion of the big board so that we can give you guys an idea of how many players we feel like the Rams could be looking at, or just if it doesn't fall as they may want it to, there's a couple players on this list that they could probably pick up and do some really good things with. So
yeah, and I don't think they're against trading up like 2 or 3 spots based on just their history and how they deal with the draft. So yeah, I mean, he's somebody that has stood out on multiple teams. It seems like a lot of people are meeting with him. It would be out of all the people we have in that top tier, I think he's one of the more likely to still be hanging around, honestly. And I know you think he'll be gone by 36, but this would be an instant fit to the D.
I think so. I mean, you talk about somebody that's a complete hybrid player. You want him to move inside. You want him to rush around the edge. He could play 3 tech with Aaron Donald. You could train there. He could train on the outside with some of the inexperienced edge rushers and try to earn time there, whichever is a better fit. I think you really kind of want positional versatility, especially when you're kind of going to draft best player available in this situation. So somebody like Adetomiwa would be somebody that, to me, is versatile enough to justify drafting at 36. Same way that Keely Ringo is, same way that Kalijah Cansey is. Right. So, and this guy is a little bit, like I mentioned, he's bigger in the ass. He's not a basketball player that looks like he's trying to be a football player. Like some of these other top edge rushers. Will McDonald's a little bit thin. FAU is a little bit thin too at the top of our list. So, I have some faith that if he falls into the right position, that would be somebody that the Rams are highly coveting. Plus, they've already met with him. So, a good starting point for
I still got my fingers crossed on Ringo. But should we go to Payne Duran?
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, the kid who has really impressive ball skills and can catch in traffic, really like him because he's just a classic tight end who can play on the line of scrimmage and a really strong senior ball. Helped his draft stock. I think he's 6'5", 257, and 12 of his 14 TDs over the last 2 years have come in the red zone. Only tight ends with more in this upcoming draft are Brock Bowers, Mike Mayer, and Dalton Kincaid. And yet we've talked about the tight end position pretty relentlessly throughout this offseason because both of us feel as if Tyler Higbee is going to walk and Hunter Long is going to be kind of hidden in the depth chart. So to see them get somebody, on the offense this high, still a little scary, but you have to look at what McVay and Snead have done in the past, and you have to use that to think about where they're going to draft a tight end.
Yeah, I mean, you're entirely right. Yeah, you're entirely right. Like that's why we have Darnell Washington at the top in that top tier. But like Payne Durham, somebody like Tucker Kraft who could fall or could rise. Right, it depends on his draft status over the next couple of weeks. But I like the idea of being able to draft a tight end in the 5th round. somebody that's slated to go mid-4th, early 4th that falls all the way down to early 5th for whatever reason because teams have already checked off their tight end needs. Whichever guy that is, Nick, whether it's Luke Schoonmaker, whether it's Tucker Kraft, whether it's Payne Durham, if any of those three guys fall into the 5th round, like that's all an easy draft choice for me. But it's way, way overly aggressive if they were to take him within the 2nd round or the 3rd round, right? So those are some guys that like it's kind of like you're going both ways because you're not deprioritizing the tight end position, but you're also taking into account that, yeah, maybe Bryson Hopkins probably isn't the next piece at tight end for Tyler Higbee. Maybe that there's once Tyler Higbee's gone next year because his contract's up for next year. So maybe you're trying to think like, okay, if I bring this player in, is he a better option than Bryson Hopkins? But you're still addressing that need without having to prioritize it at the very top of your draft is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, so there's Payne Durham, and then those are the two guys that we feel like are in the top 2, 3, 4 rounds. Then there's Aiden O'Connell, which quarterback, war number 16. If you're rating quarterbacks within this draft, he may be number 7, he may be number 8, but Aiden O'Connell, he's a guy that nobody ever believed that he would do as much as he did with that team to get them to the Big Ten championship game. A really, really impressive run that he went on. He's probably behind Max Dugan and DTR. I'd still favor my boy Jaron Hall over Aiden O'Connell, I think, from BYU. But Aiden O'Connell from Purdue, I think he's certainly going to draw some late round interest across the league. He didn't qualify for an RAS score due to some of the lack of his measurements, but he made up for it in his pro day, right? He's throwing to Payne Durham. He's thrown in the red zone. He's pretty accurate. So it's not somebody that you want to kind of go against. It's somebody that if he falls to you late in the draft, he might be worth taking a flyer on. Mentioned he's number 16 also. So Perkins, if he sticks around, might have to fight to keep his number. But I know that we all love the highly coveted number 16. So one of these guys, these quarterbacks, are going to fall and potentially be the Mr. Irrelevant for the Rams. It's just a matter of who it's going to be. So
yeah, and this isn't. This isn't somebody that stood out to me. I know you kind of, have talked me into it. But as somebody that he just feels a little inexperienced. I watched a good amount of Purdue last year, and I wasn't, truly, over the top impressed. So,
you aren't truly a Boilermaker?
No. But I don't know what it is with these Rams backup quarterbacks, but I seem to just have grudges with every single one. So potentially this is the one that they actually get for that exact reason.
Between Jaron Hall, Jake Hayner, Stenson Bennett, and Aiden O'Connell, those are probably quarterbacks 8, 9, 10, and 11 within this draft. So if you're trying to shoot higher with, you can go for a Hendon Hooker. Will Levis is going to be the 4th quarterback in this draft that goes, whether he goes to the Raiders in mid 1st round. But obviously there's a connection between Will Levis and Liam Cohn from Kentucky running similar style offenses. Who the hell knows? If they move up in the draft and they go get Will Levis, this whole exercise totally goes out the window. I just don't feel like they're going to do that.
I really don't want them to do that.
I don't think so either. But if McVay met with Will Levis and he feels like that's the future of his organization, then yeah, sure. I'm not going to be the one that throws a rock in it. I just don't think that's the direction that they're going to go in. I think it's going to be somebody like Aiden O'Connell. I think it's going to be somebody like Jaron Hall that you can groom and develop. And it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt your cap. It's going to cost you nothing. It's just, extra time after practice, spending it with the young kid.
Yeah. So just running this by and McVay and Snead, they got a plan, and their plan team tends to work out. But so you get this kid, Will Levis, you trade up for him, potentially the 4th best quarterback in the draft. You go up and you grab him. Mm-hmm. And now you still have 3 years left on the Stafford contract. So he's sitting for 2, unless something horrible happens to Stafford, which we don't want.
Right. Definitely sitting for 2 years.
Yeah, because you're still paying him. And then by the time he's out there, you may have to get him a bit more of a contract because he's not going to be able to sit on his rookie deal anymore. So I just think right now, unless you think this kid is just special talent, but
I don't. No.
Yeah, I don't either.
No.
I really don't either. So I really hope they don't do that, and I really also hope they don't get O'Connell.
Yeah.
At
I mean,
least like high. I don't want them to get him high. I want them to fill more defensive holes first. But yeah, I mean, do you want to talk about the boo boo in the room?
I would talk about Bobo Boo Boo, Jake Boo Boo, Bobo.
Probably
Yeah,
Bobo.
yeah. But it's interesting. Like the quarterback position, like C.J. Stroud might be a bona fide best player in the draft. Anthony Richardson is a bona fide freak of nature. Never seen anything quite like him. But then I feel like there's a pretty severe drop off at the quarterback position. But then you look at wide receivers, you can go all the way down to DTR, right, at number 7 or number 8 in terms of quarterback rankings, and you look to see how that applied to Jake Bobo. So I mean, this is a guy that I really like late, especially if the Rams decide that they want to try to continue to carve out that hybrid inline tight end that it can also play a little bit outside, could also play a little bit in slot when the Rams go into panic and go in empty. He's 6'5". He's 225 pounds. He's got good feet. He's a good route runner. He's able to run after the catch. Don't call me crazy, but it reminds me a little bit of Benny Skoranek. He'll be a guy that if he gets drafted, that everybody's going to want him to make the roster, despite there being a literal logjam at receiver. I really want there to be just one draft where we don't draft 3 receivers, 2 receivers, and then create this ridiculous controversy throughout the preseason. Where
this is the one. This is the one where it's just I cannot see a world where that makes sense right now. I
totally agree.
You have to stick with Van Jefferson. You have to stick with who's the guy from the Bears? Allen Robinson. Benny Sco. If you don't trade him, you have to stick with him. You cannot be going out there and getting more talent. You just can't.
I know the conversations are still surrounding Odell Beckham Jr. It's like it's too much at the receiver position. We already are paying receivers more than anybody else in the entire NFL. So it's like enough already. Although it would be a guy that I would still like to take a flyer on, because it would be a kid that you can kind of keep in your system and develop. But like, what is Lance McCutcheon? Like that's what I thought. That's why I don't feel like you need to draft a receiver, because you already have one on your roster that's essentially a fresh new draft pick in McCutcheon. So it's tough. Tough. And then there's Elijah Green. We have Anthony Kendall on this list, Matthew Hemborough, Harrison Mevis, and BT Potter. We'll go through these guys really, really quick because they're they're late round, potentially undrafted guys. Elijah Green, these are all interesting stories these last 5. I have to be honest. I had to double check that this number was accurate after I was looking up Elijah Green's statistics, as he was the MIAA Defensive Player of the Year, which is Division II. He had 21 tackles for a loss, amassing 89 total yards lost, and 11 sacks on the season last year. Like, Jesus, that is 6th all time in Division II football. Like, he's only 5'11", probably 275, clog the gap, eat the cheeseburger, clog the artery. I don't care.
Protect the McNuggets.
Protect the McNuggets. That one of the best characters as a spoof is, what's that dude's name?
Terry Crews.
Terry Crews in Longest Yard. Yeah, cheeseburger ready. Let's call him that. Let's call him Cheeseburger Ready.
Elijah Green.
If this guy ends up on the roster, Elijah Green would be a fun player to watch. He's going to very much be a developmental player, but
Division II scares me. I think of Carson Wentz as the Division II guy.
I think he's Division I AA. I think that SDSU and NDSU are both D1 AA, I think.
AA sounds like the traveling B team.
You're actually right. No, you're right, because SDSU and NDSU are both Division II. And I think like the D1 AA schools are like Villanova. And there's like schools, Delaware, I think, is a D1 AA school. So it's tricky. But there's Elijah Green. We talked about him. Cheeseburger Ready. Anthony Kendall. You ever hear of Baldwin Wallace University, Nick?
Yeah, founded by Alec Baldwin. Liberal arts-based college in Ohio.
Nice try. This is, I think, your chance, like within the last couple of picks, to be able to find your next Nick Scott, bona fide special teams contributor that can carve out a role by just being relentless on special teams. Like, this is another D3 school, D3 liberal arts school, Baldwin Wallace University. That's who the Rams are meeting with. He was an All-American D3 school, and multiple teams are in contact with him. Like, it was like the Chiefs, the Packers, like some high-profile teams were actually in contact with Anthony Kendall. So Baldwin Wallace University, look out! It's the school of defensive backs. Matthew Hemsborough, Nick, this is a long snapper. I mean, we're really, really digging deep into the bag here. This is 10 out of 10 RAS score, a long snapper from Oklahoma State. Like, this is your Matthew Orzech replacement. You can get him undrafted. He's probably a priority as an undrafted free agent. But yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at. We're looking at replacing long snappers late in the draft. And then, Nick, Harrison Mevis and BT Potter. You take us through Harrison Mevis, and I'll take BT Potter.
Okay. I'm glad you brought this up because I was about to bring up something else. Harrison Mevis, the thicker kicker, 5'11", 235, and has the most 50-plus yard field goals in school history. His long is 56, which he hit in 2021 and 2022. Let me just say one thing real fast, and I watched my XFL St. Louis Battlehawks this weekend, and the kicker Donnie Hagman set a league record with a 59-yard field goal for St. Louis Battlehawks yesterday. So, going off our fans in the comments, they do not want us to draft a kicker at all. Every other comment seems to be, for the love of God, stop talking about kickers. So I don't think they're going to. I think there's a chance with their last pick they get somebody like this, but I also don't think it's worth the risk to get an unorthodox kicker. You know what I mean?
Well, that's my question.
You know?
Like, why do kickers have to be 5'11", 235 or 5'10" and 140 pounds?
They have to know opera. They have to be, weird, skinny guys like Justin Tucker. That's what I want from my kicker. I want you to be unorthodox. What unorthodox in the traditional football sense. I don't want you to look like you can line up on the D line.
No,
not that I think this guy can at 5'11", but
no, I think between if we're talking about not drafting a kicker or drafting a kicker with our last pick in the draft, Jake Moody and Harrison Mevis and BT Potter would be our three selections. BT Potter, though, he looks like the backpack kid. I mean,
from Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide.
No, the kid that does the dance.
That
kid
yeah.
with the thing on his whatever. He's a skinny kid that got famous. I think it was at a basketball game doing that dance. It's hilarious. That's what he looks like. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. The difference in the thicker kicker and the backpack kid is who you have a choice as your kicker. He was Clemson's place kicker since 2019, so he's been there for 107 years. And he ended the season with a 52-yard field goal against LSU in the national title game back in 2019. He's got school records for career field goals with 73 total, and he has 50-plus yard field goals record with 9. He does have issues with his mid-range game and has missed all 4 attempts from 55 and beyond. So he's no Greg DeLegnick. I'll take the kid who's kicking for the St. Louis Battlehawks over him.
Donnie Hagman. Remember the name.
He sounds like he's a kicker like for The Replacements. You ever see that movie with Keanu?
Yeah, I thought you were talking about the Disney TV show, The Replacements.
But... Oh, no. The good movie.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. That's what he reminds me.
Keanu Reeves is a quarterback. I could never buy it. I could never ever buy it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but he's good. He's a good lefty, and he can move. Go back and watch The Replacements. So Keanu Reeves got some like fundamental quarterback talent built into him. He's an impressive method actor.
I'll go back.
Maybe it's a good one. It's a really, really good one. And who directs all the Avengers movies?
Joss Whedon or
No, who directed Elf, directed the live-action
Lion King. Jon Favreau.
Favreau is the fullback.
What? Oh, I love that.
Go
I haven't seen that movie. I haven't.
I'll definitely go back. Go back and watch The Replacements. It is a great, great, great movie.
Yeah,
it's up there with all the top tier football movies. So yeah, I mean that's the big board. We talked about how this is going to be a continuous, arduous process, as Les and McVay say. Let's call it a sliding scale. Let's call it the big board. Let's call it maybe next Thursday we'll do a mock draft. Maybe
yeah.
If that's what the people want, we could do a live mock draft. We do something fun. So. Guys, continue to ride along with us. We got more coming your way. The Rams in 2024, their cap situation they just freed up $58.2 million in 2024 cap this season for next year.
Sound of that.
I mean, primarily just by moving on from Bobby Wagner and Leonard Floyd and Jalen Ramsey. No other team is even close to coming to that amount. And the teams that are second most in terms of cleared cap for 2024 are the Titans at $28.5 million, and the Eagles are in third. The only other team that has even increased their net cap at only $893,000. So every other team has lessened its cap situation and cap space in 2024 based on their moves this offseason. If you look at the total cap space for 24, the Rams are somewhat in the middle of the pack, but they've by far and beyond cleared the most cap space for 2024 so far based on the way that their cap was structured in 2023 and 2022.
I do, just reading all of that, I do see a world where OBJ comes back. And I think, he takes like a team-friendly deal, which he would have to, that would have to be part of it, I think. But he'd stay in LA. He'd be playing for the Rams. He would, be a pillar. I think he would be considered a pillar at that point. They'd have to trade Robinson, I think. But I think that's possible. I think that's less possible than him going to like the Jets or some cool spunky new team, because he probably just wants to, try new things and put on a different helmet. And
Chiefs,
Jets, Chiefs,
Rams,
so lame.
Yeah, I was listening to it earlier today. Ari, My Sports Update on 33rd Team and all these other sites. He's fantastic. He was talking about how Chiefs 1-year deal, similar to what Juju Smith just did, where he kind of parlayed the 1-year deal into a multi-year deal with the New England Patriots. Makes a ton of sense. And then the situation with the Jets is all kind of like waiting on what Aaron Rodgers wants to do once he comes out of the darkness.
Well, he made it very clear. Rodgers was like, I want to play for the New York Jets. It's just now they kind of put him in a little bit of a, now that they know he wants to go there, it's like the Packers don't want to give up or the Jets don't want to give up their first round pick, but the Packers are like, well, we're just looking right at you in the eye, and we know you want this guy, and we want to get rid of him too. So it's a very weird thing. Why can't he just retire and then come back? I guess he wants all the money.
Well, you cost it's the same situation Matthew Stafford's in. You cost the franchise like over $100 million in dead money. So you put your franchise like in the pit of misery for at least 5 years because of all
honestly, I feel like if a deal doesn't get done soon, he is not above that.
No, I guess you're right. I guess you're right. It's funny that you were talking about Rodgers and like quarterbacks coming out of their rookie contract. Like Jordan Love's going to be on his fourth year. It's going to be the last year of his rookie deal. It's like he plays well, you got to pay him. Imagine that situation.
Yeah.
Well, weird.
Well, everybody, if you want to play some bets on some, playoff sports coming up, why don't you do it at Bet Online? Live betting, free contests, giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports, whether that's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, pickleball, XFL, Frolf. Yeah. You want to watch me play Ribbit King Plus? I'll live stream it and you can bet on it. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use our promo code BLEAV. Receive your rewards. That's BLEAV. It kind of seems like believe, but it's spelled in a funky way. Bet Online. That's where the game is going to start. Thanks for listening, everybody. Do not forget to
I knew that's where you were going with it. Like and subscribe. Appreciate you guys. Go Rams. Thanks for listening.
Rams. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this journey, guys. Horns up.